Well, good morning, folks. This is going to be a fantastic Leading Your Best Life because we're talking about a super important topic around leadership with an old mate of mine, David Deane-Spread, and he's got a fantastic story to tell, and particularly in context of some of the legal changes, some of the law changes that have gone on in recent times. So, David, welcome to Leading Your Best Life.
Thanks, Lee. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
You, as I say, he's looking younger and fitter, folks. So I want to find out what he's been doing in terms of his own personal routine, because he's looking healthier and younger than he did 2 or 3 years ago. So I, just out of vanity reasons, want to find out what the hell he's up to. But before we get to that, David, tell us a bit about your journey. What has been the David Deane-Spread story? Where were you born? What's been your education? What's got you to where you are now at the age of 35?
Yeah, thank you for reducing my age by more than half.
I'm a giver. I just give. So what's been that journey, mate? Your interesting journey, which I know you've been on.
Mate, look, I was made in India, dropped in London, and landed in Perth by the time I was 4.
Oh wow, that's a move around.
Yeah, my family's Irish Indian. And they, after the British were kicked out of India, many members of our family moved here to Australia.
Mm-hmm.
My parents did that via England. Dad was in the Indian Army, and he went into the British Army and then into the Internal Revenue, or whatever they call themselves, their tax office.
Mm-hmm.
And then bailed out, came here to be with Mum's family who are here, and so I grew up down in Medina, that wonderful town near Kwinana, or in the Kwinana area. Went to school at Christchurch, which is a bit of a sort of a change. Won a Dundream scholarship and ended up in the army, which was my first choice of occupation, and I remained in the military for 8 years. I served in the military police, and my last posting was the second in command of the military police school. And from there, I was headhunted into the Federal Narcotics Bureau.
Wow.
And served there, running their covert operations in the East Coast and into Asia and other places. And at the same time, I was in another discrete agency that used me when I was offshore. Came out of all of that in 2 stages. I became a contractor to the agency in the sort of the turn of the early 80s, 79, 80 was a bit of a transition. And then I came out altogether after coming back from Northern Ireland in 1990. And I'd sort of operated in that time space. I'd operated obviously around Australia, in a lot of Southeast Asia, as far east as, in fact, Panama, and far north as Kathmandu, and as far west as Northern Ireland, as far south as Adelaide.
Wow, you got around, mate, and a lot of that sounds like it's top secret stuff that you got up to.
Well, it's stuff I don't like talking about. I'm not
of course
particularly proud of it. I realised I was a tool, just a weapon that you get used, and but it gave me what it did for me, Lee, was gave me a thorough, solid ground in leading people in high risk, high stakes situations, where trust and training were the primary tools. Trust and training, and
trust and training.
Yeah, trust and training. Trust you had to earn as a leader and as a team member, because we were tight, we were risky, we were often we'd try and pair up if we could, but a lot of the times we were out alone. And communication was difficult. It was in the analog days, but pre-digital. It was difficult to wear radio devices when you're undercover. In fact, you couldn't. And so there were many times when we were many hours without direct communication with our people.
Wow. Talk about
So
resilience
that,
and managing stress.
well, it meant that we had to manage ourselves really well, and it actually gave rise to me. I mean, look, every operation we had, there were difficulties, and none of them went smoothly. There was, because that's only in the movies do they go smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that there was every time we finished an operation, we had to do an investigation as to the areas that didn't work and why they didn't work.
Mm.
And what came out of it was my recognition much earlier than my bosses was that we needed to the attitude of the operator in the moment determined whether it was going to work or not.
Mm.
And I realized that we needed to create some training for attitude. And of course,
Mm.
I was laughed at by my peers and my bosses because said that you can't do that. You've either got the attitude or you haven't. And that's why we hired you, because you've already got the attitude. And I said, I don't agree with that, because I actually had to change my attitude and learn about that my own stupid way in order to get this role. But once upon a time, I don't think suitable for this role, but I am now. And that was my argument to them. And they said, well, show us. Go on. And so I created a training program for agents in terms of their attitude. I then, and when I left, when I left that, or that became a civilian again, I adapted that to form what I now call an attitudinal competence, which is the core training that I give my clients. And I've created a workbook around that thoroughly helps the person, anyone, to develop the skill of attitudinal competence, which means
Wow.
that you can actually, I think, mate, I've even given you a copy of that.
Well, certainly I have some there. I had some of those books that you gave me, and you may have given me the Attitude and Competence. There's a number of books that you gave me a while ago, no doubt about it. Is that the big
Yeah, it's a big
A4?
one. It's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
big
yeah.
one
I've
with
got the
all the faces on the
yeah,
cover.
yeah, brilliant. Yeah,
Anyway,
that's right. It's fantastic. Really is good.
yeah, that is a workbook that contains the whole program of how to adapt, have your attitude so that you can choose your best attitude for
Mm.
what has happened, what is happening, and what might happen, and not be stuck with habitual attitudes which maybe aren't suitable for the situation.
Well, no, as I say, the attitude that says you can't change your attitude is an attitude that needs to change. As you say there straight away, that your attitude is a choice as distinct from it's locked in concrete straight away. Whether you say attitude, paradigm, worldview, the glasses you look at the world through. So let's just look at that for a second. What was your attitude and what did you change it to? Because again, I know from an NLP point of view, they talk about sometimes attitude and state are very much like clothes. Change it. You can change a jacket. You can change your attitude. You can change your state. So what jacket did you have on, and what did you change it to make you more suitable to that job? What was the conscious choice of attitude that you made?
Yeah, and that happened pretty much in the military police. When I was in the military police, I was trained as a regimental officer, fundamentally trained for infantry, as we all were, and then allocated to the Corps, and I got allocated to military police because of my height. I didn't really have a choice at that time, but I don't regret it, put it that way. And so as a regimental officer, wearing the uniform, all the military stuff that goes with that. And then I had to, I was also in look, the Army sent me to the Victorian Police Detective Training School, and I did their detective training and then did a lot of investigations in the military. At one point, there was a need for me to go undercover, basically, and I realised I had to change my attitude then,
Mm-hmm.
and not look like a regimental officer,
Mm-hmm.
and not behave like one. Not even my bearing was, stomach in, chest out, upright, look ahead, look around. That demeanor of an officer that we were brainwashed into. And then I realized that I've got to adapt, and I have to be really adaptable.
Otherwise, you're going to stand out like a, the proverbial.
Yeah, and I mean, my height is a disadvantage anyway because I'm well over 6 foot, and it's very easy for me to look like a copper, I suppose. Yeah, look like a cop. And to really, how do I get rid of that? And that required a whole change of um, posture, dressing, my carriage, my responses, I had to hide my alertness. I had to hide my situational awareness. I had to maintain that awareness without looking like I was an eagle looking out for quarry.
So it was
And
very much acting, wasn't it? You're changing your whole character, your beingness, your thinking, or at least your thinking stays the same, but well, you've adjusted as your alertness stays, but you pretend to not to be alert straight away.
yeah, I mean it is in many ways acting, but but your life is the reward.
It's not the applause from the audience, it's staying alive. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
staying
talk
alive
about,
and
as you say, high risk, high stakes.
staying undiscovered is the key. And the other thing that came out of that was how do I rapidly earn trust? Now, in
Mm,
those days, it was ultimately in order to break it.
mm,
But in the context of today's world and leadership, how do I earn trust in order to keep it?
a different ball game. Well, let's
It's
talk
a
about your
different ball
work
game.
these days, because these days, as you say, you're very much in and around leadership. And while we're at it, you and I had a quick chat on the phone yesterday about what we wanted to talk about today, and I put together this short slideshow. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to get you to talk about leadership. And we talked about bully bosses and the fact that it's costing companies these days. We also, and again, will lead to people to where you are on LinkedIn and the Metitude site, functional and dysfunctional leadership and the cost of tolerating dysfunctional leadership. And then we'll talk about some of these components, some of your great articles on your site around workplace sociopaths and some of the responses, corporate psychopaths, and the fact that you told me Australia is ranked as one of the worst country for bullying and harassment, and what that actually means, and therefore what that means from a leadership point of view and having conversations. So tell me, where would you like to start in talking about the work you do these days in working with organizations and working with leadership? What often, let's start with, what's the typical scenario where someone says, we need to talk to David Deane-Spread? What happens? Why do they call you?
They call me because they've got a high value but difficult person in the business or in the organization. The person's of value, but behaving like an asshole, basically, and causing problems. And as you saw, Australia's got the world's worst record for bullying and harassment.
Amazing.
And at the same time, in February this year, they promulgated in the workplace laws promulgated that they are now they're criminalising the neglect to do
Wow.
something about it, and that onus is on the directors and the business itself. And so there are now some very good litigation reasons for dealing with these issues, and whilst there are people out there who do a really good job, and one of them being EEO specialists, Franca Salatana, who's a colleague of mine, they provide the awareness training and how to prevent it, and through awareness and the educational side of it all. But they choose not to deal with the clear and present problem
Mm.
because it's another level of intensity. which is where I come in. And so um, Franca will recommend me to clients who already have the problem. She'll give them the rest of the business to training, and I'll come in and surgically deal with the problem person. And really, my main aim is to actually help them become effective and functional, because they are of value. And I'm, unless they fall into the sociopath category, difficult people don't mean to be difficult. There's always a reason behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I identify that reason. And a lot of it's baggage from the past. A lot of it's from childhood trauma.
Mm.
And they've developed behavioral styles that protect them, really. But there are 1 in 100 males in the workplace and 1 in 200 females in the workplace are definitely on the sociopath scale, bearing in mind that sociopathy is a spectrum. It's not a
Mm.
black or a white.
Mm.
And the other problem is, of course, a lot of leaders have sociopathic traits without necessarily being a full-blown one. And some of those traits are being rewarded by the powers that be, the shareholders, I guess,
Well, let's
because
just
they're
talk about that for a
effective.
second. What are some of the characteristics of that kind of corporate sociopath? Someone who's on the scale, who's having a dysfunctional impact on the team. What would be some of the things that would typify or characterize them?
Uh, the lack of empathy, lack of care, stealing of glory from other team members,
Mm. Mm.
um, lying,
Mm.
constantly needing stimulation, and some of that becomes behavioral problems like harassment and both sexually and just psychologically. Very good at lying, very competent liars.
Mm.
Know how to manage upwards really well. So that's a feature that I've identified in over and above what the forensic psychologists have. I've identified that the senior management don't realise that they've got a sociopath because they manage them. The sociopath manages upwards very well.
You know, charm them so beautifully.
They are very charming. They're very intelligent, very charming, and but really, what you'll notice is that the performance of the team comes in waves of high performance with new staff, and then it drops off as they realise they've got a sociopath for a boss, and then they either leave or they break down, and so there's then the wave falls way to below performance, and then rapidly comes back up again as the sociopath drives the new people, and the new people are wanting to impress because it's that honeymoon period.
Mm-hmm.
So they work their butts off, they get burnt out, and then they realize they've got a sociopath as a boss, and then they're going to overwhelm.
So HR, of course, are working their rings off because on the one hand, they're either re-recruiting people because the turnover is so high, or they've got all of these complaints and stressed out people from that team. And I would imagine that person, the sociopath, is very good at either blaming others and other people for any problems, or in other words, their capacity to take responsibility and say, "Oh, I've made a mistake here," or "I'm wrong," would be pretty low. Would that be right?
Correct. I mean, they don't realize that they are sociopaths.
Mm.
They don't. I mean, this is a full blown one. Now, bear in mind, it's only 1 in 100 males
Mm.
and 1 in 200 females. But you can get clusters of them if it's a bureaucratic type organization, and the leadership encourages it because they get results even if it's temporary, and they treat people as numbers. So we'll replace you if you can't perform for long.
Mm, mm, mm.
And
I literally was talking to someone at swimming this morning who said she was working at a major hotel in Perth, and literally that was the attitude of the boss. Well, if you don't like it, you can just go. They burn them out, don't train them, and then blame the staff, which again, I said, Edwards Deming says 94% of the problems are due to the system, 6% to the people. Don't blame the people first. Take a look at your systems. Whereas I imagine someone on the sociopathic scale, their first port of call would be, don't look at the systems, blame the people. The
Correct.
people are the
But
losers. The people are the problem.
yeah, and look, but that people problem actually creates a system. So it's a very that's an interesting debatable issue.
Mm-hmm.
Systems are created by people, and if the
Of course,
systems are
yes.
broken, created by broken people.
Wow. Yeah. So then when you come in and work with these people, some will be coachable and some wouldn't be coachable, I imagine. What sort of conversation might you have? Which again, I noticed one of your articles around having the difficult conversation. I imagine some of their other colleagues or managers may have tried having those difficult conversations. Where have they gone wrong? And what's your strategy in beginning to coach them or work
Yeah,
with them?
so where the management has tried to deal with the person, they don't have the questioning skills. They don't have the actual skill
Mm-hmm.
of having that difficult conversation, which needs to be planned.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, I actually plan even though I've been doing it for a long time. I plan every conversation, and I rehearse it.
Really? Okay.
I anticipate the answers because I've got a briefing. I anticipate the answers. I anticipate their how they may want to manipulate the conversation, and I rehearse all of that.
Wow.
And that done at the speed of thought, of course. So
Mm-hmm.
it's I'm just building on past experience, but I'm not taking anything for granted, and I treat every situation as brand new.
I vaguely remember in one of your books, there are a range of conversational kind of scripts that I can remember you questions and responses and so on to, as you
Yeah,
say, help the person plan and rehearse. You remember Sun Tzu, The Art of War, know the enemy, know yourself, need not fear the result of 100 battles. So in there, you've done just that is who am I up against here? What's their likely response? How am I going to deal with it? So you minimize the surprises.
yeah, absolutely. So you are as prepared as you can be, which will never be 100%.
Of course not.
And so you've got to be adaptable, you've got to be self-aware, and you've got to be situationally aware.
Mm, mm, mm.
And you've got to have an air of curiosity. Now, that's the biggest bit here,
Hmm.
that you have to have the mindset of being curious. And so you're on a discovery pathway.
And when you say curious, curious about what? What are you actually
Curious
curious about?
about what the what, the why, the how.
Hmm.
Um, how's this? How did this happen? What's the cause of it? What's the root cause? And I look, I never go to the systems first
Hmm.
because I know that the system has been designed by a human
Mm, mm,
and been operated by humans.
mm,
And if there's dysfunctionality in people in the design stage, it'll be built in. And we're
mm,
finding that now at AI.
mm, mm, mm,
I mean, all the
mm,
biases of the human have been built into AI.
mm, mm.
Cognitive bias, the whole, even racial bias has been
Yep,
built into AI.
yep, yep, yep.
And so, we've got to actually look at the systems again, not as though they are a separate thing, but look, they were created by humans, operated by humans, broken by humans, and ultimately fixed by humans.
Mm-hmm.
And so the key, so the what normally happens is the somebody in the organization, be it HR or the leadership, have tried to deal with the person and it's not worked.
Yes.
And or they've come good and then they go back to it. And so that I get called in, but my primary and that's not my desired starting point. My desired starting point is getting leadership alignment, having a culture that creates positive results
In other words,
and
think broader than just the individual problem. Think the organization,
100%.
or certainly the whole leadership team. Let's start with the leadership team, of which this person may or may not be part of that team.
Yeah. And so that's my preferred entry, is that we want to create, well, it's actually very more specific. It's very specifically, does this organization want to be the publicly recognized employer of choice, and then leverage that to become the publicly recognized provider of choice in their space?
Yeah.
Now, that's very specifically my ultimate aim. And
Yeah.
it begins with leadership, but it has to extend to the whole business and via the culture.
And as we say, the speed of the group is the speed of the leadership. If there's leadership, and as you know, the fish stinks from the head first. If there's a problem with the organisation, don't blame the organisation. Take a look at what's going on at the leadership level. Even though it may be a bunch of geniuses at leadership, there's the individuals who is that leadership, and then there's how's that leadership team work together in terms of alignment. And you're working at both levels there, by the sounds of it, aren't you?
Yes, yes. I mean, I start with the leadership, and ideally, I'm hoping the leadership will be empowered sufficiently to impact their organisation without me having to do it for them. I mean, that's the ideal, because we want the leaders to it's trust and training.
Yes, trust and training.
And trust and training, and leaders do the trust, earn the trust, and do the training.
Yeah.
And then you've got, because people who train together bond together.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And so you know that in your own team sports areas of life, which you spent your whole life doing.
Yeah.
And you know that that when we train together, we bond.
Yeah.
And one of the easiest, and I insist upon when I'm training for the organisation, that the leaders attend the training too.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
if they don't, then I'm not likely to want to work with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, train everybody else. We're perfect. We don't need training because we're so smart, and we let train everybody else. That's always a bad start, not least of which you're reminding me of a great podcast I did with a guy called Kieran's other name, an Irish guy who is an ex general manager with GE Finance, and he talked about Jack Welch and the leadership training that went on, and the intensive leadership training that went on at GE. And as he said, clearly, part of the value was all the information we got, but the other part was exactly what you've talked about. The leaders training together, you form an incredible network across the organization, which sets up great culture and cooperation across boundaries. But it's the investment and the valuing of leadership, and which again, Jack Welch himself always took part in and led, as distinct from, no, I've done my leadership training, you guys do it. The leaders have to role model that desire to be coachable and get better and lead, don't they?
Absolutely. And look, I often get the leaders saying, well, I don't need to do this because I've already done it. I said, okay, if you've already done it, how come you got the problem?
Nice.
And they shut up and they come. And if they still don't come, I say, look, this is not going to work. And they say, why not? Because you're not there.
Which goes to show so many leaders underestimate their role and the function and the impact of leadership. And as you know, I say, leadership is a function. All groups of human beings need leadership. And I remember my mate Grant Donovan years ago saying, in the Army and the SAS and other places, leadership's a function. In other words, if the leader gets knocked out, someone else just steps up into that role and leads. So basically,
Absolutely.
Everybody needs to know how to lead. Everyone doesn't lead at once, but it's a function. Who is functioning as leader today? Even in our pod squad swimming, there's a leadership function of which 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 different people could step up into that function and essentially continue to lead. But they all know the importance of the leadership function.
Mate,
And
absolutely.
the impact it
And
has on
look,
the culture and the energy of the group, which Jack Welch spoke a lot about. You're managing energy, you're energizing people, bring good energy. All of these were actually core values of General Electric. It was in the very language. But anyway, tell me what your thoughts are when I talk about that.
yeah, look, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, even in nature, leadership is interchangeable. I mean, a flock of geese, there's always a leader in front of that flock,
Yeah.
and they all use the slipstream to make it easier for the rest of the flock, and then they swap around. And
Great.
eventually, in fact, everyone gets to go being the leader because it's the
Yeah.
hardest job because they're carving their way through the air and everything else is in the slipstream.
Yeah. It's a great
So
metaphor,
I
isn't it?
mean,
It's a great metaphor.
yeah, and so that really works. And well, and then you've got another model. There are many models of that. The wolf pack has another model,
Mm.
and
Mm.
they'll send when they're moving and they're migrating from one part of their territory to another, because they have an expansive territory. And if they hunt out an area, then they're going to move. They'll send the weak, the oldest, they'll lead,
Clever.
because that'll set the pace that everyone, because they look after their weak and they look after their old,
Yeah.
even to the point of feeding them and you know, and hunting for them. And the leaders remain at the rear.
As distinct from the Darwinism, which says the fittest survive, therefore we just let the old and weak fall off the back, which is completely not true at all in the context of, as you say, a compassionate wolf pack.
That's absolutely, and and there are different models and different ways of being effective, but a lot of it's based around that creature's traits and characteristics and role in the tree of nature, if you like.
Yep.
Now we've got our own, and so we've got to realize that we've got our own tree of nature, and we are compassionate, we're emotional, we're intelligent, we are very, very adaptable, and we've got to recognize that we have um, the full capacity, the full range of attitudes are capable within any one individual.
Hmm.
And the problem is that we develop habits of attitude. Therein lies our problem. And so we need to become attitudinally competent so that we can choose the best attitude for this situation and not just react in an habitual way,
Yeah.
because that's how you were brought up.
Yeah.
You're
How mum, how
brought up
mum
to
or
fear
dad
yourself.
behaved, how mum or dad behaved under stress, or when mum and dad had a problem, or when mum and dad were challenged. Um, that starts to clearly, that's where we get our role modeling from in those early days. Yeah.
100%, or other people that impacted on us, like teachers and siblings even,
Yes.
and so there's a range of inputs. The and we then spend the rest of our life, hopefully, trying to improve upon that, overcome them, because they were taught to us unintentionally, or we picked it
Yes.
up unintentionally,
Mm.
and now we're looking in the mirror and saying, I really do need to do something about my quick temper.
Mm.
I really need to do something about my fear of speaking up, all those issues,
Mm.
and the thing about leadership is that it's a lifelong self-development journey, and so the leader who thinks he's done it and done, or she's done, I'm done, I've reached this point, the dizzy
I've done
heights
my
of being.
MBA. I don't need to learn anymore.
I'm
Oh
done.
boy.
I'm done. I'm ready. I'm just now going to sail into the future, maximize my salary and and get the rewards I duly deserve.
Boy.
And I say to those people, hand in your badge, you're not fit to be a leader.
Well, that's right. That's the word I has been used a fraction too much there versus the we. Because Jim Collins and Good to Great, that was one of the things they found in the study was when a CEO was using the word I way more than the word we, that in itself was inversely proportional to share and business performance. In other words, they were self-orientated as distinct from group company, team orientation. Do you want to make a comment on that in terms of what you've observed or you've read and seen in your life
Yeah,
there?
look, fully agree. I mean, I see it now in political leaders, particularly prime ministers of all colours. Now I just get that off. Sorry, prime ministers of all colours. My cabinet, my people, and come on, But they're not trained to be leaders.
No,
They're trained to be politicians. They're the big difference there.
absolutely tragic,
But
tragic.
but I also, there is a rise in narcissism, and I'm separating the narcissist from the sociopath. They're not the same. These are people who are very self-centered, very entitled, believe they deserve, and I think that's come out of our a real problem that we created in the 90s with and the early 2000s, where no one's a loser.
Everyone gets a certificate of
Yeah,
participation.
certificate. Yeah, and yeah, crazy. It's just. I mean, I understand the empathetic nature of it, but it's not reality.
No. And you're talking about excellence means doing extra work. How do I get from being one of the slowest to one of the fastest?
Yeah,
Do more training, get better coaching. As you
yeah.
say, training, get the training. I don't forget one of my son's mates, even in primary school, in the running race was one of the slowest, and got some coaching and ended up coming second or third. Was an incredible improvement. Just what the heck?
Wonderful.
What's gone on there? This kid has just got so much faith. You could see the style. His arms were different. His body was different. All from coaching. Same person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, training is the key. I mean, people in business use sports teams and military teams and elite teams of all persuasions as metaphors for how they want to be. But they leave out the very thing that made those people what they are, and that's training.
That's right. That's right.
Right? They want you to perform without training, and then you've got the really and I just call them dumb bosses. You said, well, they're training on the job. You're doing the work. No, that is not training.
No,
Doing the
no,
work is not training.
no. That's why I
Training
love the
is
Japanese. We did all this work with BSI, and I learned so much from the Japanese in terms of the concepts. And one of the concepts in Japan, two concepts I want to share with you in the context of leadership is one is called makasiru. Makasiru means when I delegate a task to you, my honor is at stake here. So I'm going to work with you to help you be successful at that task, as distinct from I've given it to you, good luck, you stuff up, it's your problem.
yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
yeah, absolutely. And look, delegation is one of the areas where the breakdown of work occurs.
and trust, I'd
Inadequate.
imagine, because you've dumped a job on me, setting me up for failure instead of setting me up for success.
Yeah, and normally well, not normally. In the dysfunctional space, the delegating work they should be perhaps doing themselves, but they don't want to do it for whatever reason, or they, as you say, they might be setting that person up on purpose, or they simply don't have the awareness that maybe this is not the appropriate person to delegate that task to.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they delegate. Accountability as well, which you cannot do. You delegate authority and you delegate responsibility, but you keep the accountability.
If it stuffs up,
Which,
you are the one accountable.
yeah, and a really good example of that is what's happened during the alleged war crimes, where the senior officers did not accept, or the officer ranks did not accept the accountability for what the soldiers did.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that I was so angry over that. That is not how I was trained.
So
My
straight
men
away, there's
stuff
a
up.
major breach of trust.
Well, if my men stuff up, it's on me.
Yep.
Which is really what you're saying, that Japanese tradition is.
Makasiru. The other one I want
Yeah,
to share with you, when in terms of training, they call it shuhari. Shuhari. And shuhari means shu means copy the master until you can do it the same way the master does it. Then you can maybe make some minor modification, but then eventually means you can do it without even thinking. So you've gained almost the heavenly, it's really unconscious competence. But sure, so there's a process of learning. So guys, just copy me. So therefore, as a leader, if I'm looking to train and mentor, guys, here's the system, here's the way I do it. Follow these steps, and my job is to help you get to do them that way. Versus, there's the book. Good luck. I'm too busy to coach you or train you, which is exactly what my friend working in the hotel talked about today, to the point where she resigned because she just said they just keep dumping more work on us, don't do the training, then blame us. Which is exactly, what you don't want. So, mate, there's so many great things you've said there, but let's get to talk about you now. Firstly, if I ask David Deane-Spread, what is your mission? What's the difference you want to be making in terms of leading your best life in terms of the work that you do?
Thank you. It is my mission is to help leaders become the very best versions of themselves. Simple as that. Which means that they can earn and keep the trust of their people, and they look after their people, and they inspire their people to be great.
Fantastic.
Because that's how we get things done. That's how we achieve excellence.
And why? If I say why is that your mission? Why have you chosen that as your mission?
Because first of all, that was the belief that was instilled in me by my father, and by the officers that trained me, that I still look up to, and by the fact that I have seen so much damage being done by dysfunctional leadership, and innocent people being hurt.
Yeah, innocent people
in a big way, and the fact that it's not rocket science.
But it is discipline, and it is knowledge, isn't it?
It is discipline. It is self-discipline. It's self-discipline, and it's really holding yourself to a higher standard, and not allowing your attention and your focus to be hacked by social media and dopamine addiction. Which is the problem we've got today.
Yeah. And coming back to, as you say, leadership is a function. In the absence of good, healthy leadership, you're not going to have high performance or the realization of potential of the people. And in fact, it's going back the other way. And as you say, the forest shapes the tree. The ecosystem is not operating at its optimum. But talking about ecosystem, on a daily basis, coming back to you looking so young and healthy and fit, what have you done over the last, let's say, 12 months, 2 years, in terms of managing your own life, leading in terms of self-leadership?
Yeah, I mean, a good question too, because as we age, we tend to lose condition, we lose muscle. Our telomeres are shortening. In other words, the edges of our cells are becoming more vulnerable to age and to aging of the cell. And if we do nothing about it, we'll decline rapidly. Now, I have no intention to stop working. I won't even use that word that begins with R.
Why would you? Exactly.
I love what I do anyway, and it's a joy. It's a joy. Every day is a joy. And so I realized, well, it would have been well over 12 months ago now, that I realized that, first of all, once upon a time, I was very, very fit, operationally fit, because
of course you had to be
my work
to stay alive. Yeah.
And when I left all that, I really got into some bad habits, like a reaction, I suppose, to not having to be on my guard all the time. and it was quite a joy to let go, really. And then that letting go became a bit of a habit. And then I discovered that I'm a natural. I'm naturally an overeater.
Okay.
I like my food, and also my body was telling me to take a break, and then that became a habit. And then I realized suddenly I realized I'm well overweight, on the border of being obese. When I was younger and operationally, and you'll find us a lot with people who do what we do. We played hard as well as worked hard, but that playing hard was often involved drinking.
Sure.
And so I had picked up this lifelong habit of drinking, not to get drunk, but just to relax. But that over time, when you're doing nothing, 2 glasses of wine a day will put on weight.
Sure. A lot of calories in it.
A lot of calories in it. And so the first thing I decided to do was to change all that. I hired a coach to keep me accountable. Actually, it was Samantha Jackson. I'm going to give her a plug because she's really good.
This is
And
a
she's Mel
fitness coach,
Gibson's
fitness coach or a life coach? What kind of coach was it?
She's a fitness coach.
Yep.
She's a fitness coach, and she's Mel Gibson's fitness
Oh, wow.
coach,
Fantastic.
the actor. And she lives in 2J, so she's in Perth,
Okay.
and she does it all by Zoom, which is pretty good. But I met with her at the CEO Institute, and that's how I met her. And I said, right, sign me up. And so we started in November last year, and I said, okay, well, I had the meeting with her in late September, about now, and she said, we'll start in November. And I said, okay. And she said, you know that there's no drinking when you're on the program with me. I said, oh, okay, fine, that's fine. And I made up my mind then that I'm going to stop drinking then. And I haven't drunk since then.
Fantastic.
I mean, look, if I go to a restaurant once in a blue moon, instead of having lemon, lime, and bitters, I'll have a glass of red or a glass of white, depending on what it is. That's it. But that's probably, I don't know, maybe a glass a month.
Yeah, right. No,
you
yeah.
know,
So it's pretty much zero.
that's
It's pretty much
nothing.
zero. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll only do it if it's most of the time I won't. It's just if it's a special occasion, we're going to somebody's birthday or whatever,
Yeah. 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 So no drinking. Bang. That's been a big difference.
That's it. That's gone. That's gone. Exercise regime is high. I mean, I'll do 8 to 10,000 steps 4 times a week at Bold Park and make sure I do the hills and Rebold Hill.
Yeah.
I'm at the gym 4 times a week.
Fantastic. Wow, that's fantastic, mate. So walking and the gym, that's a great course. So they got the
Walking
muscles,
and
ligaments.
gym, and if I'm sitting here in front of my computer, I've got my alarm, which might go off very shortly. And if it does, it means that I've got to get up from my computer and go and do some push-ups, squats, and sit-ups.
Oh, wow. So you're doing like exercise breaks during the day as well.
Oh,
Every
absolutely.
Every hour, 2 hours?
On the hour.
On the hour. Wow. That's going to
on
get
the
you
hour if
going.
I'm sitting here. Look, only belt out 20 of each, nothing.
Wow. But even so, it's great for the body. Great for the body, mate.
Oh, it's
Wow.
really good for the body.
Wow. And what about the mind? What are you doing in regard to mind health?
Right. So I have a mantra that I say every morning and every evening. And when I'm waiting in line, because I actually can be impatient when I have to wait. So now I say my mantra.
Wow.
And my mantra is all about my fitness and my health and achieving my goals, working with my clients. It's all and enjoying my life.
Well, I know we put that together, I think, 2 or 3 or more years ago when I asked you to write down your goals and we converted those into affirmations, and then
Yeah.
you recorded those and you'd been using those. So that's fantastic, mate.
Yes, you did reignite in me. I used to have mantras before, and I believe in all of the mindset. I know that's important. That's part of attitudinal competence.
Sure.
But I had let my own discipline on that let it slip.
Yes.
And so you did indeed reignite it in me, and I appreciate that.
Oh, great, mate. Great. So let's also then talk about, because I love asking people, what books are you reading at the moment? Talking of mind and brain and feeding the brain. What books are you reading at the moment?
I am a bit philosophical, and the book that I keep going back to is Cahill Gibran
Mm,
book, and the Prophet.
The Prophet. Fantastic.
And that there is so much depth in that is applicable to leadership
Mm,
and very current.
mm,
We are in a very tumultuous time,
yeah.
geopolitically, climate-wise, financially. We've got all this gender dysmorphia going on.
Mm,
There's political correctness is probably out of hand now, and
mm.
people are being trained to be hurt by their own emotions.
Yes, yes. Well, I just listened to Ricky Gervais on a podcast called Smart Lesson. As Ricky Gervais says, just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right.
Correct.
Just because you're
And
offended
and
doesn't
and
mean you're right. It just means you're offended. Some people are offended by scientific fact. It's like saying, I'm offended by the law of gravity. Oh, therefore the law of gravity doesn't exist for you. It's like, that's not the way it works, mate.
yes, but isn't that a signal if we are a part of nature, and if the law of gravity is going to offend you, then I think you need to consider what the problem is in you.
That's right. That's right.
Because everyone's going to be impacted by gravity.
Yeah,
It's just there.
exactly. Exactly.
But if we break
Exactly.
the laws, if we break the laws of nature, if we break the laws of nature, what's going to happen?
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. Exactly. So let's just talk a bit about, you talked once before about your officers. Let's talk about mentoring and leadership of you for a second. Uh, Often people have had crucial conversations in their life with various mentors or leaders. And I'm thinking back to, I remember Jim Gerritsen saying, one of our water polo guys who played for Australia, David Neesham, who'd been a water polo player, said to him, mate, you can keep playing football and you might get one trip a year playing over East, playing against Victoria, or you can play water polo and you'll get in the Australian team and travel around the world. Which would you prefer? And he said that one conversation made a massive difference in his life. And of course, he chose to play water polo, did go to the Olympics and so on and so on. So I'm just wondering, can you recall one or two conversations with mentors that helped you, that shifted you, a crucial conversation that helped shape David Deane-Spread?
Yeah, there are two. One, my mother always wanted me to go into the army. Isn't that funny?
Mm.
She was very much an army child herself.
Why? What was her motivation for that?
Look, she believed in. Look, she was from India, but wanted to be British,
Right. Yes.
right? And she admired the British military. Um, uh, Actually, I think she was in love with the Duke of Edinburgh more than she was in love with my dad. But anyway, she wanted me to go into the military, and I did too, so that was okay. And Dad was silent. Now, Dad had been in the military. Dad was actually the intelligence officer for the British Army in Burma.
Wow.
British Indian Army in Burma.
Mm.
General Slim. He worked with General William Slim, who became the Governor General of Australia
Okay.
after the war. But Dad worked with him, and so he was silent. He didn't say anything. He didn't encourage me one way or the other.
Mm.
And I asked him one day. I said, Dad, what do you want me to do? He said, son, I want you to do what you want to do, but just make sure you're bloody good at it.
Good call. Wow. Yeah.
You know,
That's a
and
crucial piece of advice right there.
oh wow, that stuck with me big time. And then the next piece of advice that I really do remember, and it was when I was a young second lieutenant, and I thought that I had to know everything,
Mm,
and that I had to be, and I thought that the leader was the person who knew everything,
mm,
and of course they put a huge amount of pressure on me
mm,
because I know I didn't, but I had to
mm.
pretend. I was
Fake it till you
pretending.
make it.
I was faking it, and
Mm,
pretending I knew everything.
yeah.
And and then this Bluey Mitchell, Warrant Officer Bluey Mitchell, came up to me. I'm getting a little bit emotional about this.
Beautiful. Yeah. Just shows how
Came up to
important it
me,
was.
came up to me and said, "Sir, you know, it's okay. Um, I am a better navigator than you, and I'm here to support you." And I was faking that I knew my navigation really well, and I
Mm,
was a
mm.
breezable navigator, but it hit a bit of a problem, and I was overwhelmed, flummoxing
Beautiful.
around, bullshitting my way around. And
Mm.
he came up to me and said, "I'm here to support you."
He gently called you on your own bullshit.
Yeah. And he took me aside. He didn't do it in front of the troops.
No, that's even better. That's
And
how smart he was.
yeah, and Bluey. And he taught me on that day
Mm.
the value of humility and vulnerability in one
Yeah.
hit
Yeah. Beautiful,
as a
mate.
leader.
Mate. Beautiful. Beautiful.
I'm
No,
so
you
glad I
reminded me.
listened.
Brian
I'm
Cook,
glad I listened.
Brian Cook, who's now chief exec at Carlton Footy Club, but he often talks about that moment in time when he realised it's not about you as leader and it's not about you knowing it all, but it really is about engaging the people and engaging the brain power, and again, leader as facilitator of brain power, calling
Yeah.
on who is the best navigator versus I've got to act as if I got all the answers, which of course is it's ego based, isn't it? So just on that, if you were going to give the 13-year-old David Deane-Spread some advice, um, what would you give him if you could have talked back to him now? Here you are at your age now, uh, talking back to the young David Deane-Spread. What would you tell him to do, or what advice would you give him in terms of tips or tools?
Yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt, remember that um, leadership is a lifelong learning journey.
Mm, mm, mm,
You'll never, I mean, I've been doing this for over half a century,
mm, mm,
well
mm.
over a half a century, and I'm still learning.
Yep,
And
yep.
I'm very happy to do that.
Mm, mm,
Um, Ego management is the biggest thing to learn, in my
mm,
opinion. I
mm.
think that is our biggest problem. I mean, we need ego to navigate the planet, but we must manage our ego and use it wisely
Yep.
and use it sparingly.
Yes. Wisely and sparingly. I like that. Yes. Yes. Great.
And that's the advice I would, because when we're young and full of testosterone, and
Mm,
we're bulletproof. Um, you know, so I'm lucky to be alive. In
mm.
fact, most of us are lucky to be alive
Sure.
because of that. Between the age of sort of 16 and 25, we were at most risk
Mm, mm,
of
absolutely.
killing ourselves through our
Mm,
stupidity.
That's a young and bulletproof.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember as a 16-year-old lying on the roof of my mate's mother's car, which we'd stolen. It was a Peugeot, and we drove. We went and bought a King Brown each, a bottle of
Bottle of
beer,
beer. Yeah.
and we went to Point Perrin, drank it there, and then we drove down to Mandurah, and I lay on the roof of the car as we sped down the road to
Oh my
Mandurah
God. Oh my goodness.
at night.
Oh
Now,
my goodness.
if you know, if they'd had to brake because of a road jumping across the road, I would have disappeared. I would have been ground into the gravel or
We
into
wouldn't,
the road.
we wouldn't be
I
having this
mean,
conversation. Yeah.
what a oh God, when I think about that, And of
Right.
course, I didn't think anything of it.
No.
I'd be all right. I'd be all right.
Yeah. Right.
It's
Wow.
stupid,
Mate,
stupid, stupid.
Mate, you've grown up a lot since then. So I'm just going to go through some of the notes I've taken, mate, because in no particular order, as you say, we can change our attitude. We can do training for attitude. The whole concept, as you say, of attitudinal competence, that the attitude is not locked in concrete, and the choice of choosing your best attitude, and this whole thing you've just touched on, ego management, and how that ego management is so important in building the trust, but it's trust and training in terms of leadership. And we want to work with companies to help them become employers of choice. And of course, so much of your background is, as you say, Duntroon, India, Army, military police, covert operations, the whole principle that leadership as a function. And we love those metaphors of the flock of geese, the leader at the front, breaking, and then everyone, but that person can, that geese can drop back and the next person step in, and the wolf pack being a different model of leadership. The leader not at
Yeah,
the
I'd just
front,
like to
but
make one quick correction.
yes.
Whilst I won a Duntroon scholarship, I didn't go to Duntroon. I went to Portsea instead.
Okay. All right.
Portsea is the same military content, no university.
Okay. Okay. But either way, solid immersion in leadership. I mean,
Yeah,
years. You're reminding me of years ago. We did some work with Joondalup City Council, and two of the guys on the team of the garbage collectors were ex-British commandos. Pommy, can see fit guys. They were twin brothers, I think, from what I recall. And they
yeah,
said, Lee, the problem here is man management. And that really resonated with me, in that, hey, when you've got two ex-commandos who clearly have been immersed in some of the highest level of leadership training, man management, human being management training in the world, that's evolved from probably the Roman Empire and before, saying there's a man management problem here. There's probably a man management problem here. All of
yeah,
that knowledge and all that training, let alone where they'd been and what they'd done in the field.
absolutely, absolutely.
And your point about the clear and present problem, and even clear and present danger of a highly dysfunctional leader, and the fact, as you say, there's a sociopathic scale, not necessarily you're either are or you're not, and 1 in 100 males, 1 in 200 females, but in the meantime, those that may not even be diagnosed as sociopathic at the extreme can be creating major issues for companies and organizations. And the fact that, you say there's criminalization, criminal neglect for some of this, that directors really need to be on their game in sorting this out, as distinct from a person saying you guys made absolutely no effort to solve this or help us or protect us from this behavior. Mate, as you say, curiosity, stay curious as a leader, lifelong learning, and coming back to ego management. Mate, is there anything I haven't asked you or a topic you'd like to cover before we move into the home straight?
No, I think we're doing really well. This is a conference. Look, it's such a wide-ranging topic, isn't it?
Yeah,
But I guess the one thing I would like to say, and I'll get on my soapbox just for a short moment
sure,
here, if
please
that's all
do.
right. I think that largely leadership development, leadership training is quite broken.
Really?
Yeah. Um, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the results,
Yes.
right? So the investment in leadership training in globally is in the hundreds of billions of dollars
Yeah, it
annually.
would be.
And yet we have this leadership problem, and everyone knows we've got it. And it's not only in the corporate level, it's in the political level, it's in the community level, it's even at the family level.
Yes. So why is it
Um,
broke? I mean, if they're doing the training, what's the problem?
the training,
So the
the
training
training
is
is the
not.
problem.
So the
The
training is,
training is the problem. I don't believe we're doing the training correctly.
yes. Tell me, well, what should change, would you say?
Well, I think first of all, it needs to be moved out of the theory field. As
Yes.
you have said, leadership is a function. It's a
Yeah.
doing. It's a doing. It's a verb. It's a doing word.
Yes.
and too much of leadership is purely at the thinking level.
Right. Like pen and paper as distinct from demonstration of leadership.
Yeah, well, they actually confuse leadership and management. And so there are theories of management as well as theories of leadership.
Yeah.
And that's where they spend all their time. And it's about measurement, and it's about planning, it's about strategy, and it's all of those visions and all of that. That's important. That is important, and it can't be neglected, but that's often all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that we're not getting the traction. So what I differ. I do not do that. I do not waste my time on stuff they can read in a book.
Mm-hmm.
I do the stuff that you can't get from a book.
Yeah, nice.
And I do it in such a way that it's directly related to that business's results.
Yeah.
In other words, we go in knowing that we're going to deploy the skills directly into a project or directly into the flow of daily work.
Nice. So it becomes real, becomes relevant, becomes real time as well as we're solving
And we
problems
can
that we've got today.
we measure it. We don't measure it with happy sheets after a workshop.
Mm.
We measure it in dollars and time and productivity at the output, work
Yeah, brilliant.
output.
Yeah, then there's a real ROI. So I'm just going to go now to both your website, because if people are interested, there it is, Metitude Embedding Leading Behaviours. There it is there. How to get hold of David. It looks like you've looks been upgraded in the last year or so, or 6 months or so. Looks great, mate. Well done.
It has, mate. Yep.
Fantastic. And then also here you are on LinkedIn. There you are. And again, as you say, veteran community business owner operator. So people can get hold of you through both of these areas, and I'll put these links in the actual notes of the podcast too. So David, there's a little gift you want to pass on to our listeners. What is it?
Mate, I've got an ebook which will help CEOs and leaders be able to implement what I've spoken about today, what we've spoken about. And it's a gift, my gift to them because of you. And I've got the link is in the will be in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly, mate. I'll put it all in there. So thanks for that, and we'll share that far and wide as well. David, this has been fantastic. We could talk for another hour or two, but for the sake of helping the listener get some great information today and knowing what to do when it comes to leadership, one final question: is the future for David and your business and your life, what's next for you? What's the next 2, 3, 5 years looking like for you?
Really to expand the reach of the business to help more people.
Yeah.
That's the primary aim. And to do that I'm going to do that without adding more people to the business.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I'm going to learn more about how to effectively use technology to deliver the same quality to more people.
Yeah, fantastic.
And that's to me a worthy challenge.
Absolutely, mate. It's been so fantastic catching up with you. I look forward to sharing this far and wide, and look forward to us continuing our ongoing business relationship, mate. Thanks so much, David.
Likewise, mate. Thank you, Lee. I really appreciate it, mate.
Good
on
mate.
you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.